Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Today is May 28th. We are rocking through the Bible reading plan, and this week's summary goes from the very last chapter of Nehemiah all the way through
Job 20.
Job 20. That would have been yesterday, Job 20.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, lot to clip through. We're not gonna go verse by verse like a Sunday morning or Wednesday night or anything, but we're gonna kind of give the overall.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Excuse me. So, Nehemiah.
Yes.
Give quickly recap Nehemiah. What's happening there?
Nehemiah is when they went back to build a temple. It kind of
Who's they?
The Israelites. They went back to build
That's
a
right.
temple.
Israelites. Yep.
And it kind of coincides with both Ezra and Haggai in a
Yep.
sense. So they went back to build a temple, and then when in Haggai they built the temple. They were all complaining. The young people were excited.
Yeah.
The old people were complaining.
Yeah, the young bucks were like, "Yeah, we got a temple."
Yes. Well,
And all the
older people, I think.
curmudgeons were like, "Not as good." So
Right. We already
back
had
in
a
my
good
day,
one.
we
Yes.
had a good one.
So
Yeah.
so that was Nehemiah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of fun to see
No,
how.
that was Haggai.
I mean, yes. And in Nehemiah, it was kind of fun to see how they did that. How they tore down idols
Yep.
and they put people back in places they needed to be
Yep.
and put God first.
Yep. Whether it's kind of a church revitalization plan, whether it's in the business, I mean, things don't change. You gotta things fall apart for a reason, and when you're bringing it back to health, man, you got to get rid of those things. Sometimes you gotta move some toxic people out of the way.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so the Old Testament, if you will, is like a prequel to the cross, prequel to Jesus, right? All of this starts off with the promise, your seed's going to crush his head, his seed's going to bruise your heel, the Eve thing, right? Talking about, okay. And so all of this story is getting to Jesus. And so if we keep in mind, because this is important, we have to go, okay, every book was written by someone to someone about someone,
Yep.
right? These aren't fairy tales. These are actual people inspired by God who wrote this. And so the context matters.
Right.
And so God makes man, they sin. Eventually, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, they go into Egypt. Moses brings them out. They get made to the nation of Israel. God makes Israel promise again because they're waiting on the promised Messiah.
Right.
Makes Israel a promise, and he says, hey, if you do what I say, you can stay on this land. If you don't, you won't. And their big problem, by the way, wasn't that they weren't good enough, they didn't work hard enough, they didn't sacrifice enough. The main reason they got kicked off the land was they disobeyed the Sabbath. The command where God says, I want you to rely on me and rest is what they didn't do.
Right.
So they get kicked off the land. Then Ezra and Nehemiah, a couple groups of people come back to rebuild the temple, rebuild the city. Haggai writes during that time. And so that brings us to the end of Nehemiah.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Esther. I say all of that to get to Esther. Where was the book of Esther written?
In the wilderness and in Babylon.
In Babylon. And we know that because the king Ahasuerus. Well, tell us what Esther is about.
So Esther is about King Ahasuerus, and he needs a new queen. So
Is that how you say that?
I don't know how to say it. I can't say it right, I'm sure.
It's kind of like Worcestershire. It's like,
Yeah.
And then King Esther.
Yeah. So he was on a search for a new queen because his queen had shamed him. She disobeyed him in front of all of his
How
people.
dare she?
I know.
I know.
Another topic there, but yeah. So they're on a hunt for a new queen.
Yep.
And they
So Esther gets the job.
Yep. And then
And is this an Israelite king?
no,
No, it's Babylon king.
a Babylon king.
You know,
Yep.
it's because he goes to kill all the Jews.
Yes, there was an edict written to go kill all the Jews.
And she is a
And she's a Jew.
Jewess.
A Jewess. And so God appointed for her to be in that castle,
Yep.
in that kingdom at that time.
That's where we get that really often quoted verse. Perhaps
For such
you're
a time as this.
born for such a time as this.
Yes, yep.
Yep.
And God used her as an instrument to save her people.
Okay.
His people. Yep.
And where is the very first time we see God mentioned in Esther?
That's a great question. I don't know that he is named in Esther.
He's not.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. And that's...
I'm like, that's a trick question.
It is a trick question, yeah. I'm so proud of you. And that's the big question mark. The big question mark is God, the God of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Is the God of Israel the God of Babylon? Is the God that promises that land? Some of those people are back in that. See, before the people in Ezra and Nehemiah went back, it was, well, we're here because we have to be.
Yeah.
We're here because we don't have any other choice.
Yeah.
But with Ezra and Nehemiah, people are going back to Israel. Mm. These are the people, you have to remember, these are the people that for whatever reason, oh yeah?
Me too, he's getting squirrely.
For whatever reason, they chose not to go back to Israel.
Right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, they know God promised them that land.
Right.
They know that the God of Israel, that the temple is in Jerusalem.
Right. The
temple has been rebuilt. The walls have been rebuilt. These guys are no longer here in captivity. They are here on purpose. Mm-hmm. And now the question is the God of Israel the God of the Jews?
He is.
And we don't see anywhere in this book God is mentioned.
No, he's not. Mm-hmm.
And so I think Esther was really written to answer that question mark of, is the God of Israel the God of the Jews?
Right.
And as you're going through, it looks like he's not. Think about this. We know the end of the story. Mm-hmm. But Esther gets appointed, which is not, it's not a Cinderella story.
No.
Okay? This is not, she doesn't want to be there. She's not, like, this is like, yay! Yeah. So she's stuck there. Meanwhile, this Jew hater is put second in command.
Right.
Then he hatches up a plan to kill all the Jews.
Right.
There's nothing good going in this story.
No.
And then they say, you know what? Let's just fast and pray.
Yep.
And then this Jewess has to go to this man who's already killed his last wife, risk her life. Yep.
So she's not been summoned. She had to be summoned by the king, right? Mm-hmm.
So nothing good is happening here. And so in the first like the first many chapters of Esther, it is, the answer would seem like it's no.
Right.
That the God of Israel has forsaken the God of the Jews.
Right.
And it doesn't get till we get to the end of the story where you know, the word providence is an old English word that was always used to refer to like God and how God, his unseen hand, God's invisible moving. And so we don't see God mentioned, but we see the providence of God put all these things in, and then we get to the end and like, the God of Israel is the God of the Jews. Yeah. But it's important that we realize this isn't in Israel. This is after they have the choice to go back.
Right.
This is when they're really wondering the question, am I a good Jew if I don't go back? Which is the wrong question. Right. Because we do this.
Yes, we do.
Am I a good Christian if?
Right.
And the real answer is God a good God even if?
Even if, yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what the book of Esther is about. Is God a good God even if?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a good book.
Incidentally, we get to the book of Job.
Yes.
And I think the book of Job answers the exact same question. Is God a good God even if? Yep. All right. So as we're rocking through Job, what's the book of Job about?
Job is about one of God's men.
Time out for a second. Did you say that you had a question about the end of Nehemiah before we...
I did have a question.
Did we answer that?
No.
All right, let's do that before we get into Job.
Yes. So in Job, Nehemiah 13:10, it says, I also discovered that the portions of the Levites had not been given them, so that the Levites and the singers who performed the services had gone away, each to his own field. So I reprimanded the officials and said, why is the house of God forsaken? Then I gathered them together and restored them to their posts. And it goes on, but my question there is, so they left their ministry. Is that what it's saying? They left their ministries to go back to their field to support themselves when God had already given a provision that was not given to them. Is that what I'm reading?
Correct. Correct. Remember Haggai says, hey, why aren't you building God's house? And they said, well, it's not, we haven't received from the Lord yet. God hasn't moved our hearts. And he goes, well, did he move you to build your own houses? Right? That's what Haggai, the question was? Okay.
Right.
And so this is Nehemiah saying, hey, you guys aren't building the house of God. Not only are you not building the house of God, you're not providing for these priests because of your selfishness, and you're calling it. And here's the thing, right? There was no king there. There was no one to make them this, and so it was really this group that kind of got comfortable. They got comfortable with each other. There was no accountability, and so they quit doing what God wanted them to do, and they started doing what was easy for them to do. They started doing what was serving themselves and comfortable for them to do.
And so that put the ministers in a place where they had to go have the burden of...
Right, because the book of Leviticus, Moses is setting up where God didn't give the Levites any land. Because their job wasn't to be farming. Their job was specifically to devote 100% of their life to interceding as priests. And so then it fell to the other Israelites to provide for them, and they just weren't.
Yeah, that was interesting to read.
Yeah.
Yep, that was my question.
Okay. Okay, into Job. Job, I would say, is the same question as Esther. Is God a good God, even if?
Yeah.
All right, so, and we only get to chapter 20 this week, so the good, ending, the good finale, we're not there yet. Catch me up the first 20 chapters of Job.
Okay. Let's see. So Job was a man after God's own heart, and Satan was looking for someone to try and to test, and the Lord told him, how about my servant Job? Regardless of what happens to him, he is still going to serve me. He is still going to worship me. So
what's funny is even in that description, I think we shy away from what really happened was this. The Lord said, so this is the first thing. It wasn't Satan's looking for someone, hey, God. No. Out of the blue, God says, and the Lord said to Satan, where are you coming from? He tells him, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him on the earth. Okay, so go ahead, because now you go. Yes. Okay. So this isn't God saying, oh man, if you gotta pick somebody, right? Because here's the thing, when it comes to God and Satan, Satan never calls the shots. Right. When it comes to God and Satan, God is never the victim, he's never the inferior, he's never the respondent. And we have to keep in mind that God and Satan are not co-equals. Yeah. It's not a yin and yang. They're not equal partners. Right. There's God the creator and Satan the creation. Yeah. All right, and so anytime we talk about this, God is never the respondent. He's never the thing acted upon. Right. All right. Oh, now my head is going to zoom. All right. And so that creates a lot of questions, but we have to get that right so that we start thinking about everything else correctly. What about this? I've heard this question. Well, God can't be in the presence of evil. Have you heard that? I have heard that. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that statement? I think that that's a false statement because Jesus, who is one of the Trinity, spent 3 days in hell, right? Which there's more people there. I'm not going to jump into that theological landmine because I think that goes a lot of wonky places. But what about But Jesus spent time on earth, and to think that earth isn't wicked, and before that, God is everywhere. Yeah, right. God is everywhere. Yeah. Okay, and so we don't have to start jumping out into different areas. We can just simply say God is everywhere, and so the idea that God can't be in the presence of sinners is silly. It's silly, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That comes from, I think it's Habakkuk, where it says God can't look upon evil. Mm. And it's not saying, that's evil. Oh, no, I was going to look at it and whiplash. That's not what happened. It's saying he's not just going to look upon evil and do nothing and just, I guess that's just, stuff happens sometimes. Yeah. He's going to deal with it. But people take that verse and then get wonky with it. So if you've ever heard God can't be in the presence of evil. Yeah, that's not true. It's silly. Yeah. And people do that. It comes down to the heaven-hell thing. People say, well, you can't go to heaven unless Jesus because God can't be in the presence of evil. No, that's not why you can't go to heaven. You can't go to heaven because you're a sinner and that needs to be punished. Right. And that's why Jesus came, so that we could go to heaven. Right. But it's not about God's lack of omnipresence.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, so Satan heads up there and God says, hey,
Boy, yeah.
see my boy?
And he strips him of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Kills his family, kills
Yep.
his flocks, then attacks his body physically.
Yep.
And the whole time, Job never denies God the whole time.
So the book of Job is essentially him looking at God and saying, God, do you see me?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what's going down?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see, are you, right? And then God eventually, towards the end of the book, God looks at him and says, Job, I see you, but do you see me?
Yeah, where are your eyes?
Right? Do you see me? Because you're a gnat. You're a flea. Where were you when I told the snow where to hang out when it's not falling?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I see you, but do you see me?
Mm-hmm.
And then Job, punchline, Job says, I do see you.
Yeah.
Because before he's trying to justify himself,
Mm-hmm.
right? He says, I do see you, and I hate myself.
Yeah.
Compared to the holiness of God. And here's a reality. Spoiler alert. Sunday, as we're working through Mark 9, we get to the part about where he says, if your eye causes you to stumble, it's better to go to heaven without an eye than to hell with an eye. So we're talking about hell. And here's the reality, and I think this is what Job teaches us. If I spent my entire life doing everything I could for God, and if I got up there, or if I had a dream tonight, and he said, at dawn, you're headed to hell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a single right to complain.
Hmm.
When it comes to the holiness of God, when it comes to his absolute excellence and majesty, all of my best justifications absolutely short. Absolutely fall short. And that's when Job gets to the spot, and he kind of alludes to this. He says, even if I could get a court appointment with God, what would I say to him?
Right.
What I really need is I need a man that can put one hand on God and one hand on me. Speaking, of course, prophesying about Jesus the Christ. And that's why we talk about the fear of God's beginning of wisdom, is because without Christ, my best is just, I have no right to complain, because what he did to Job is nothing compared to what he has the right to do.
Right, yeah.
Like, our wickedness compared to his righteousness is so fall short. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that to Job. Why not? He has every right.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And then
It's hard truths to wrap our heads around.
It is. But that's when he eventually goes, do you see me? Right? And then he restores everything. And the lesson to us is, we wonder why we feel like we have the right to something. But if you take Jesus out of the equation, we're all helpless and hopeless, and he has every right to do what he wants to us.
Right.
And it's only the grace and the mercy of that good God that allows us to come back in a relationship, that allows us to live with him forever in heaven.
Yeah.
And so I would say that the paradox is, we read the first part, and in our sinfulness we go, oh, Job didn't deserve that. Oh, I can't believe that happened to Job. He didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
But the real thing, when we see God like Job did, and here's what happened to Job, then he realized, oh, I deserved all of that. What I don't deserve is what he gives me at the end of the book.
Right, yeah.
We read it and think, oh, he doesn't deserve to be punished. Oh, it's good that he restored him back the way he should be.
Right.
And what Job sees, what God tells him is, I didn't deserve to be blessed. I deserved to be punished.
Right. Totally changes our perspective on gratefulness and gratitude for what the Lord has done and has given us.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
And something that's really hard too is, like, I think about when I'm in trials, like, who do I go to when I'm in the middle of a trial? Do I go to God and have my eyes on him, or, like, we see the wickedness of his friends and his wife, telling him, how are you not denouncing the Lord at this time? Like, I can't imagine going through some of the stuff he was going through, and his closest people encouraging him to I don't know. There's a lot of hard stuff to read in this book, but and as a when someone comes into the counseling office, we pull out the book and we're like, okay, let's
Let's figure out what God says about ourselves, our
Yeah.
problems, or how to fix it. And there are real solutions in here. But how many, even believers that we know, are quick to say, you know what, God's not the answer.
Right. Oh, yeah.
This pill's
right.
the answer, or
right.
this psychiatric thing's the answer, or that over there is the answer.
Right. Putting something off, like that's like, what am I trying to say? Like a moral change instead of a heart change. You know, there's all kinds of answers other than God. You know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we don't turn to Him for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Nehemiah, Esther, Job. There you go.
Yes.
Any other questions before we head out?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we are headed to a barbecue, so we will bid you guys goodbye
See you later.
and see some of you guys Sunday.
Yes.
And as always, if you're in the area, you're free to jump in on one of these with us. We love that. We had someone do that a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Questions, you can text us your questions, email them, put them in the offering plate, bring them up to me at church. We don't care how we get them. So until then, we'll see you next time.